Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 23 of the Reusable Space Program. 23, of course, being the holy number of the goddess of chaos. However, I hope that it is rather less chaotic than previous episodes, which have been full of things randomly exploding. No, I want things to be assembling rather than disassembling, because we are finally going to complete the lunar base that we started many episodes ago. We have three fuel tanks remaining in orbit. We must transfer all of these to the surface. And of course, this is a very delicate operation, which involves more or less aiming for the exact target, slowing down and basically depositing the fuel tank near to the half-constructed base on the surface of the moon. Now, if you've watched the International Space Station being constructed, you'll know that it is a delicate procedure, that it uses astronauts and everything to pull parts together. The places get docked in and then they get unpacked. But with me, I'm more, there's not going to be any Kerbals involved, because right now the Kerbals don't do that much. You pretty much still have to build parts that dock together. So here I am flying away and taking one last look at this this fuel dump. The fuel is actually empty except for that large fuel tanker. So we're gonna fly over it on a very low, 2-kilometer orbit, 2-kilometer perihaps, and just basically trying to kill my velocity as quickly as possible. I'm gonna try and fly this in cockpit mode because it looks cool. I am, of course, using mechanical jet to help a little, where you're going to use the smart ASS and the translatron. The landing autopilot is essentially useless, so I don't touch it. But here I am, just trying to aim for the target in question. Of course, bring down the landing gear from this point of view, because if I press G, it will also put down the gear on the main spacecraft, which could knock the payload underneath. And if it skews it off-center, just because it's pushing against it, it could result in an asymmetric, an off-center center of mass, which would be just terrible when you're hovering just a few hundred feet above the planetary, or the lunar surface, not the planet, the lunar surface. So yeah, we just do a bit of this kind of jockeying to try and get it close. It takes a lot of patience to just get this thing in as close as possible, but finally you get it figured out. And there you see, just to the left there is the old harvesting unit. This is the new harvesting unit. It took 8 launches to get these pieces up into orbit, and it's going to take another... Well, it took several more trips. It took 2 trips to the moon to actually move the stuff into a lunar orbit, and 8 trips to deliver this thing, and of course, beyond that, we've had to transport a lot of it across the lunar surface by truck. So number 2 comes down, and just again continuing to navigate by hand here. Once you get used to it, it actually makes a lot more sense. Flying from the first person point of view actually gets away from a number of problems that I've had with third person. And specifically, it's nice to know where the front of the vehicle is, so to speak, so you can pitch down towards it and adjust my velocity. The nav ball isn't the most useful because, again, somebody decided to put a light, right on top of the cabin and shine it into the nav ball, so all I see is a big bright point of Phong shading or whatever. Specular lighting, right? That's what they call it. Do they even do Phong shading anymore? I don't know. I think I'm showing my age when I talk about such primitive graphical techniques. But yes, we're coming down with great ease here. You can see the numbers in the top left corner. I like to have the surface information up because, well, it is dark and you really do not want to hit the surface. We're just hovering along here. It's not like it's not like the Apollo lander. The Apollo lander would run out of fuel very quickly. Also, the Apollo lander would not be particularly good at flying one of these things because you couldn't attach anything underneath it. Now, I've been watching Lunar Flight and talking with the developer, Sean, just about what's coming up in multiplayer. There's going to be multiplayer Lunar Flight really soon now. I don't know when, but really soon, I keep getting told. There will be, you know, collaborative missions and things like that, or, you know, flying around the same map. And there will be some sort of PvP shooting each other. We've seen the missiles demoed. But one of the things I was saying to him is, you know, it'd be awesome to have that game with more spacecraft, different spacecraft. One of the things I lament is because they're single-engine spacecraft, you can't sling anything underneath them. You know, this one has the 4 rockets, so that there's a dead spot underneath, so that we can actually deliver payloads. Anyway, Sean says, unfortunately, it would take quite a lot of work to support different spacecraft in the game, and it may happen, but not anytime soon. Anyway, this is the final payload coming down. And it's actually coming down in a very steep trajectory. I kind of cut out the whole rendezvous here, but I actually managed to land from the site in orbit, drop the stuff off, and catch up with it on the same orbit, and then land again. So it was going as fast as I can here. I was quite impressed by my ability, but of course I completely edited that out because this video would be far too long with all the pointless orbital rendezvous. Instead, you're getting to watch me just land this thing. Also note that I have in fact turned on the lights, by the way, because landing this thing near it is a lot easier when you can actually see where you are, right? And again, I should also note that this is running at 4 times normal speed, and even then it feels slow. I think, I think I must have had the patience of a saint. It took a ridiculous amount of time to do this. But nevertheless, it is delivered, and I am departing into orbit, and it is time to assemble our lunar monstrosity. And of course we do this using wheels. It's a lot easier now that many people pointed out that there is in fact a parking brake on the space, on the lunar object thingy, on the wheels. On the wheels there is a parking brake if you click on the little brake button at the top. Now if only I'd started building this before the official introduction of the rover wheels, I could probably be moving these things around with the own power of the wheels rather than RCS, but it doesn't matter because we're going to be mining tons of the stuff, therefore I feel it is okay to squander it. From this point on, I'm not going to be worrying too much about the lunar base. We're really going to be concentrating on the interplanetary operations. But here we are, coming in using the camera, of course, to keep myself aligned. You want to keep the angles kind of low, and in fact I had a big problem with this one not wanting to line up. There's a lot of poking around, a lot of bumping, and a lot of correcting to try and make sure that I am in fact lined up as best I can here. And what happens? We come in. Oh yes, that's right, and I lost that bit of footage. What happened was the first one that docks was causing a physics glitch, which was causing the end to pop off, so I had to do it like 5 times, and the one time I did it, where the end didn't fall off, I didn't record. So yes, we're just going to see 3 other pieces coming in. Yes, I'm sorry. Again, you know, me and my reloading. Don't worry, if you see me doing a set telling you that there's no reloads, there will be no reloads. I'm just having problems with things spontaneously breaking for no apparent reason. It is a very frustrating thing. More interesting as well is the Keithane refinery block on the end. It keeps popping off randomly when I'm working. Even when I go into the developers menu and set unbreakable joints, apparently that unbreakable joint is not unbreakable. It goes above and beyond when it comes to braking duty. It is able to brake where other things are unable. But anyway, we're coming in. We've got it. Oh, no, it's still not sure. I'm just reading the angles off the bottom here on the little TV screen. You see me saving just before I dock because of the spontaneous braking situation. But in that case, we get it. Excellent. Look at that. It's looking like a giant F. Or it would if you were looking at it from underneath. A giant F, because that is the the first letter of the word I've been saying every time the thing spontaneously explodes, right? Oh dear. The things I go through. Anyway, while these things are moving under their own power, you know, if you're doing this, you could, spend the effort to build yourself like a tow truck that would move these pieces into position. The truck I have is cool and all that, but I don't think it's particularly good for reversing the pieces together. And well, you know, I guess there's better options now. Now that the official wheels have been added to the game. Of course, when these were designed, we were still in 0.18. We didn't have official support for wheels yet, and that's why they were built with the aircraft wheels. I mean, they were also designed to kind of fold up, have those wheels fold in and have the legs come down for extra braking power. But yes, we're coming in to deliver this third piece. We're almost there. Now you notice that we have all these lights all over this vessel, all over this base, but they're not really casting proper light, and that's because the number of light sources I have was turned way down. So I made a point of making this look a little more photogenic. I went into the main settings menu and turned up the number of lights per pixel or whatever. I think that's the option, lights per pixel. And so now you see that when it's computing the textures, it's hitting way more. It's looking far, far better. Although some of these things are getting really washed out because they're getting totally obliterated. But the light around that base is looking pretty darn sweet. I don't know what the effect is on the performance, because it just felt like treacle regardless. I was running very few frames per second. It's not the graphics card that's really affecting the display speed. It is the physics. And physics, I can't wait for that to be optimized a bit, because because it is really it is the bottleneck in most systems. If they could even make it multi-threaded, who knows? Anyway, we're bringing this last piece in. We will have completed our base, although you see that we have options for future expansion. We can just keep slotting pieces like this together as long as we want. But I don't want to, because I want to get off and actually do interesting things like exploring other planets, right? It's really interesting right now to see the discussion coming out of NASA over whether they should be going to the moon again or whether they should be going to an asteroid. And they seem to, it looks like they want to go to an asteroid, but a lot of people want to go to the moon, and that's politics, huh? Anyway, look, we have our final piece, and we have our fully completed base there, huh? Look at that. Let's get those drills drilling. Start mining that green gold and nuggets of pure green. Ah. Yeah, there we go. And is it coming out yet? It seems to take a really long time. There we go. We're actually having fuel coming in. Oh yeah. Look at that. Excellent. So what else? Well, this one I'm gonna repurpose now since it's not needed. I think I'm gonna fill this up, and I'm gonna take this one out to Minmus as a kind of I don't know, an exploration mission rather than anything else. It's not. It's otherwise it's going to sit around idle. We don't need it here. And of course, now that we've decided to start mining, we can deploy it in anchored mode. Look at that. Excellent. Let us admire this thing alone on the lunar landscape. Look, it's totally automated, right? That's the way to do the Kethane bases. Just who needs Kerbals on them? They just get in the way. They want to play games, whatever. Look. Sitting alone in the night on the dark side of the moon. That is a long way away. That moon. Oh, what's that white thing? Oh, darn, it's my mouse pointer, yes. Anyway, as I said, I wanted to go to other planets. This is the step. This is our initiation of our plan to go to other planets. This is the habitation module of the new spacecraft I'm building. Of course, it looks rather unorthodox, rather unusual, I'm telling you. It kind of resembles that physics-breaking object that I had, right? No, I'm not planning to travel to other planets using that, no. This is going to fly totally legit. It is, in fact, the crew capsule, and it has multiple places for crew to sit. We have the main home capsule at the top. That's going to be the bridge, the command center. But there's these little habitation modules on the end. Now, I actually had a major launch bug with this, and if you watch the artificial horizon at the bottom, you'll see what's going on. Now, as I start picking up speed and getting higher up, I start to get a force off center. So to get myself back on center, I back off my thrust. And that allows me, with the RCS, to keep firing, but of course then I'm burning fuel at a lower rate than I should. And this is all very mystifying. I've looked at the thing several times and I can't figure out what would be causing the thing to sit off center. So, but look very carefully at the spokes of that thing, the two bars that stick out. Those are airplane fuselage parts with windows on the side, and it turns out those contain fuel, and I did not realize this. And also they are attached inside that to the 6-point node, the structural part with cubic with 6 attachment nodes on it. And it turns out that does not pass fuel in the same way as other things, by the looks of things. So one half of those was passing fuel down to the engines, and the other half wasn't. And that's why I'm finding myself burning at very, very low thrust rates to try and get into orbit. In fact, I run out of fuel after, of course, backing off. If I had kept the fuel, if I'd been able to thrust at full speed, it would have meant I would have used less fuel, because early on, being able to accelerate faster actually saves you fuel, at least once you're out of the atmosphere. So you see me looking for any fuel that I have around this, and one side of this has nothing in it, right? It has been transferred through. So I get a tiny amount of thrust from the little fuel tanks in there. Nothing there. Nope. Still trying to figure out how I'm going to get this thing to orbit. I'm firing my reaction control system because I know there's a decent amount of delta V in that, but it takes a really long time to burn out. So, continue. You see, I just have a periapse that is above the atmosphere. And then I click around and I realize, oh yes, wait, there's fuel there. Aha, that would explain why my thing has been turning off center. Regardless, I'd got this far into orbit, and that minor engineering problem has been dealt with, and I think I can actually get it into a stable orbit, although I will end up having to correct it and circularize it later. Now, the habitation module itself has no controls. It doesn't have any. It has rockets on it, but that's related to testing the rotation system. And you see the bearing going to work here, right? See that? It rotates while the rest of the spacecraft stays still. Unfortunately, because of the way it works, it's going to need rockets to start it up, really. I think it will. Anyway, we're going to attach the second section. This contains fuel, power, RCS, and it has solar panels. This is going to bolt onto the back and be part of the spacecraft that stays in orbit. And this one, again, I just seem to be having terrible problems getting them up into space. But with a bit of work, I do in fact get some control. And after all that rather hairy launch things, I was sitting there ready to self-destruct this thing, but no, I didn't go for it. The little known fact is that in every mission launch that NASA and everything does, there's one dude that sits there with, that has the self-destruct button ready to go, and he's the one that has to push the button, even if there's astronauts on board. Yes. Never happened with a manned vehicle, but should it happen, they may have to make that decision to destroy the vehicle before it lands on something with more people in it. Anyway, we're coming into dock here. This one is a little more... This is actually really light. Once we've got rid of all the fuel, this is practically an empty tank, and it is really sprightly. With the RCS being used, it just turns around ridiculously. Now you see, there we go. That's the rotating section working. These are free-flowing bearings. They don't actually have any power attached to them. There's also the rotatrons, but the rotatrons stop rotating after you stop pushing the button. So I use the free bearings and then accelerate it up by some other means. And so here we are, bringing the drive section, the landing section, and of course the resource harvesting section. This is basically a variation on the Kethane miner that I originally sent to the moon, but this will act as my landing vehicle and hopefully will let us explore strange new worlds and plunder their Kethane supplies so the mission can continue for at least 5 years. After all, now that they have their own artificial gravity, they don't need to worry about their bones turning to, jelly, I guess. You see, those guys on the space stations, right? They can return to Kerbal any time. I mean, we've got this regular bus service, right, that just takes them there. But if you're traveling out to another planet, there's no like way to just turn around and go home just so you can stretch your legs. So we have to bring the gravity with us. And that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. When really it was just a whole... I thought it would be very cool to have a spacecraft with a spinning middle section. You know, a bit of a challenge. And we may have to stop it spinning from time to time for maneuvering purposes. And there's actually a braking system. There's quantum struts in there that we can turn on and off. And if you turn it on, it stops very quickly. In fact, it stops so quickly that sometimes if it's spinning really fast, the rest of the spacecraft can snap. But we're bringing in the drive section. We almost have a complete spacecraft. But I think I want to bring a few more things with us. Look at that. See, I've not been touching that. That is just spinning under its own momentum. And that is the way you want it, right? You don't want to have to keep on putting power into this thing. Anyway, there are more preparations to be done, but we shall see these in future episodes. Until then, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.